On May 27, 1794, Cornelius Vanderbilt was born on Staten Island, New York. His parents were Cornelius Vanderbilt and Phoebe Hand. Growing up poor on Staten Island, Vanderbilt learned how to become successful the hard way. At the age of 11, he quit school and began working for his father's ferry boat business. He took out a loan for a ferry boat of his own and began profiting at the age of 16. As a scrappy youth, Vanderbilt would fist fight and typically win to settle his business disagreements. At 19, he married Sophia Johnson.
Do you, Cornelius Vanderbilt, take Sophia Johnson to be your lawfully wedded wife?
I do.
Do you, Sophia Johnson, take Cornelius Vanderbilt to be your lawfully wedded husband?
I do.
You may kiss the bride.
Okay.
They had 13 children, with only 11 living to adulthood. Their names were William, Cornelius, Francis, Phoebe, Sophia, Ethelinda, Mary, Eliza, Emily, Maria, George, Catherine, and then a second George. During the gold rush, he expanded his ferryboat business and began transporting people across the country. After creating his first empire in a ferryboat monopoly, Vanderbilt saw a change coming. The change came in the form of railroads. As the Civil War began, Vanderbilt started to sell off his empire, but not before donating a steamboat to the Union Army. At his peak, Vanderbilt sold everything he had in order to invest in the Transcontinental Railroad. He continued to employ the tactics that grew his steamboat company. He drove his opponents out of business by reducing costs and playing the stocks game. His investments paid off, and within a few years, he was the richest man in America, worth $75 billion in today's money. His tactic of buying all available stocks did eventually burn him when he was swindled of $1 billion in today's money by the no-name duo of Jim Frisk and Jay Gould. After this defeat, Vanderbilt realized that the money was no longer in expanding the railroads, but in controlling what is shipped on them. This brought Vanderbilt to a partnership with the unknown John D. Rockefeller, a struggling oilman from Ohio. He could not seem to make ends meet. But that's where Vanderbilt comes in. Rockefeller had struck black gold with the birth of the oil industry in America, but without a way to transport it, it was nearly worthless. With Vanderbilt's deal, this nobody would soon be turned into the infamous man of Standard Oil. Vanderbilt's rail lines shipped all of Rockefeller's oil, so he could therefore control its path all over the country. At the peak of his railroad control, Vanderbilt's wealth reached $75 billion in today's money, and at this time he controlled 40% of the nation's rail line. The crown jewel of the railway empire that still stands today is Vanderbilt's Grand Central Station. Not to mention that in his building and managing of the railways, he standardized the tracks using a standard gauge of 1,435 millimeters. He passed almost his entire fortune to his family. However, he did gift $1 million to finance the aptly named Vanderbilt University, a Methodist university in Tennessee. Cornelius Vanderbilt passed away at the age of 84 in New York, New York.